Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your Knack for Business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Fransgrote from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc.
Today's topic is franchising, how to scale your business using other people's money. And from our audience perspective, how can franchising help you grow your business using other people's money? That's what our guest, Lori Karpman from Lori Karpman Company is going to answer. Lori is a multi-award-winning professional in the franchise industry. As the CEO of Lori Karpman Company, Lori helps brands grow their business using other people's money. LKC is a one-stop done-for-you franchising your business consulting and legal services firm. She also is a craft nerd, makes pillows, dishes, jewelry, and all sorts of other crafts. Plus, she loves skydiving. Lori Karpman, welcome. What's your favorite saying?
My favorite saying is by Roosevelt. The secret to success is doing the common things uncommonly well. I believe that's true. And something I've used in my business. It's about doing the small things, but doing them, adding a little bit more to it or delivering your product in a way that's unique.
So the franchising space, that's a unique space. How'd you venture into that path?
I actually fell into it. I'm a lawyer by trade. I started my career as a tax lawyer. And about 7 years in, a good friend of mine calls me. He says, we use a lot of outside counsel. We're thinking of getting in-house counsel. Do you know anyone who would be interested? And I said, yeah, me. I'll take that job. So I did. I moved over there and I was there for 10 years. They had holdings that were all in the franchise industry. They owned 3 chains of restaurants, all of which were franchised. I spent about 10 years really working strictly in the franchise field, general contracts, franchise agreements, leases, financing, that general kind of franchise work. So I got about 10 years of experience there. Then I left. I created a chain of restaurants, which I subsequently franchised. And after 5 years, I sold that company. And then I created Lori Karpman Company, which is my full service franchise consulting firm. And I've had that firm for a little under 25 years.
Lori, you made some really courageous, big loop choices. And some little voice somewhere told you not to do it because you could fail. You chose not to. Tell me that story.
I don't listen to that voice. I don't have that voice that says, oh, you could fail. I don't consider failures. I consider them lessons. So there are things that I've done. I always have my hand in multiple businesses, and there's lots of investments and things that I've done that I thought, yeah, probably not such a good idea. And then it wasn't such a good idea. But for the most part, I really don't let fear hold me back. If I decide I want something, I go for it and I get as far as I get and encounter whatever obstacles I do.
When you're having someone that's in the startup phase and your recommendation is, hey, go right into franchising, don't wait for it to ramp up. Why do you recommend that, Rick?
Because if you are considering franchising your business, you need to set it up from day one as a franchise model. What does that mean? Let's look at the restaurant industry, for example, because that's what people understand the best. If you're going to be serving a particular brand of pasta, you have to make sure that same brand of pasta is going to be available all across the country. So you need to set yourself up with national suppliers because you will have franchisees in different parts of the country. They will need supply. You need to make sure that they can get the food sources, the same plates and dishes and decor and the same paint colors. You need to make sure when you're starting out, if you're going to franchise something, that you're putting into place the systems and procedures you need from day one.
Because those are really key points. And I get it. If you walk into certain franchises, whether it's a gym or it's an eating establishment, a fast food joint, it tastes the same typically across the country.
Yeah.
How does a person then make sure they got the right source? Let's say it's the pasta. How do you know you're going to get that pasta across the nation?
You have to find a supplier that can deliver it across the nation. Usually the supplier themselves may not be able to provide to the nation, but there are a lot of aggregators that carry a lot of products and you can buy things from them. Often you need to use a distribution service.
If you end up getting a supplier and you're all squared away, how do you establish an exclusivity or even the packaging so that when the product leaves the supplier, almost like it's a white label service, how do you guarantee that it doesn't start showing up? You see that with hair salons a lot of times. They only sell directly to hair salons. They don't
Correct.
do retail.
One of the ways that we do that is that we brand the product. So let's say it's Lori's pasta, and we put it in Lori's pasta with a particular box. That becomes exclusive to Lori's pasta. So they can't sell that to anybody else. If they want to sell a similar product, they could sell a similar product to other people, but they can't use the name Lori's pasta and they can't use the packaging because all of those things are branded and usually trademarked.
You talk about using other people's money, which I think is brilliant.
And that's the only way to do business, right?
The one thing that comes to me is franchises sell is we will help you find financing. And when you're dealing with getting people franchised, like the franchisor, you're probably helping them get money too.
Yep.
How do you work financing on those two categories?
You're talking about two different levels of financing now. So you're talking about startup or funding for the franchisor to expand their business. And then you're talking about when they sell a franchise, how do the franchisees get financed? The reason I say that franchising is growing your business using other people's money is because the decision to franchise is a financial one. Well, let's say you want 10 locations, they're $100,000 each. You can go to the bank, borrow $1 million, open up your 10 locations, but then you got to run 10 locations and manage and the labor and the supply and all of those things. Or alternatively, you find 10 people that each have $100,000 and you teach them to do what you do. That's what the franchising model is. You teach people to do what you do. We can always get financing for the franchisee. There are specific lenders that deal within the franchise industry. So they will help people get SBA loans or something using their 401k or whatever kind of financing is available to them. Financing for the actual franchisor is usually something that by the time they get to me, they have a source of financing for that. More often than not, they're using their own money and the family's money. They can go out and get a loan depending on what kind of assets. So a lot of them will go out and they'll take a mortgage on their house or a second mortgage, or they'll take out a line of credit that's more personal to them.
When does a person figure this out? How do you know the idea is so hot that it's a matter of scaling it, but you're taking the scaling process kind of not out of your hands, but you're giving it to someone else? Do you have a cookbook recipe of, no pun, considering we're talking about pasta? Here's my cookbook recipe of this is how this thing starts up.
Yeah.
How do you figure when you should be pushing it out and it's a finished product? Because if you're starting up, that means there's no proof in the pudding, so to speak.
In order to work with people like me, you need to be able to show that it's been profitable for 2 consecutive years. I need proof of concept. They have to have at least one location that's been running, and it could be running for 10 years. As long as it's got the last 2 consecutive years before they come to me. Then why do you decide to franchise? Because people come to you and they say, this is the best pasta I've ever had. You should have this in my neighborhood. People keep telling you how great the product is. And that's usually a sign that franchising is a model that you could use.
You, the lawyer, Lori,
Yeah.
What are the legal aspects that you run into quickly in the franchising world?
Mostly what I run into are branding issues where people have an idea, they have a name, but they're not able to actually get the name that they want. The biggest stumbling block is making sure that the name of the business is something that you could trademark across North America or the United States. So the biggest challenge is right at the beginning with the branding.
So when you're doing the branding, then when they come to your doorstep, does that mean they've got everything packaged ahead of time? They're coming to you raw then?
They come to me when they come to me. They brought a successful location. They can show me numbers that shows that they're profitable and that franchisees will be profitable. And they need to have a concept that you can easily replicate. So it has to be something that would be really easy for other people to do.
We've heard that conversation before. When if you want to sell your business, you have to have your SOP, your standard operating procedures in place. So process is everything?
Process is everything. The key to success in franchising is consistency. And you don't get consistency unless you have an operations manual and standard operating procedures. If you have no consistency, you have no success. Just think about it. When you go to a McDonald's, it may look a little bit different. The menu may be different depending on where it is, but it's a McDonald's and you know you're in a McDonald's. There's enough recognition between the locations that you're in a McDonald's location. So while locations can be customized for the area in which they are, typically everything else is standardized.
I spent some time in a franchise myself, and I found one of the hardest things is maintaining standards. Some owners think they're more brilliant than their franchisor. Some people got lazy or sloppy. How do you maintain standards?
First, you maintain standards with your operations manual. Then you need to make sure that you are going out to each of the locations weekly. And usually you go and you have some kind of a checklist of things that need to be done or needed to be done. So you've got some kind of checklist that has been created by the franchisor, and you're ticking off what they're doing and what they're not doing. Then that goes back. So often franchisors will have a support person out in the field, and that's what their responsibility is, to visit the locations, make sure that everything is consistent, and to help them make money.
Do you train secret shoppers?
Yes. We use secret shoppers all the time.
It sounds like you have a team that's in place. Obviously, if you started out and you just made 2 franchises, I don't think you need a large team. It's probably local to your area or
Yeah.
region. But as momentum picks up and all of a sudden you find yourself, you have the next burger joint that everybody loves, whatever it is, for whatever reason, how do you scale up that team? What should you wrap around you? If you're national, obviously you need remote office locations or maybe not, or do you hire other third parties to do that support, or how's that work?
Yeah. At the beginning, when they're starting out, they hire people for support. They have people like me to provide them the support that they need. So typically, or when they get to about 5 or 6 locations at that point, we'll tend to hire someone who will be a junior operations person to supervise the locations. Until then, it's all done by the franchisor. All the marketing, the branding, the legal, the ops manual, that can all be farmed out. My firm does all of those things.
How do you vet franchisees?
They have to be people that are more than just have brains and have the money. You're looking for people who come to the table with a skill set that you can't teach them. Because the whole thing about franchising is that there's a lot of training involved. And so you teach people how to do what you do. But when you're vetting franchisees, you're looking for skills that you can't teach them. Interpersonal skills, supervisory skills, management skills, sales skills, the ability to deal with irate customers. Those are all the soft skills. When I vet, I'm looking for the soft skills. Because I can teach anyone the hard skills. But if they don't have the soft skills, they won't be successful. And I can't teach that.
It's interesting because having come from the corporate world, you'll have people that are really good at what they're doing from the healthcare industry. Sometimes that skill set, that person that you're talking about with the deal with the irate customer or just bedside service. Sometimes the person doesn't have it. They're really good at what they're doing. They're genius. Everywhere else, you need help. You have to have that other person to interface.
What we do in a situation like that is I've had situations where I've sold franchises and I have a franchisee that's a really great candidate, but they're a little bit afraid of the public and they don't look like they're going to be able to do the sales, but they do look like they're going to be able to provide the service, answer questions, deal with customers. In that case, a franchisor will often require that the franchisee hire someone who's going to do the business development and sales for them.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So when you have this crew that you're bringing together, even if they're novices or you're hiring people, let's say, to work inside your franchise operation, how do you develop a training package around that?
If you're thinking of franchising, come to me before you start because, again, all operations manuals, there are training manuals that are created. So from the operations manual, we create training manuals. So those training manuals there'll be a training section for the franchisee themselves. And then there will be individual training for each one of the positions in the business. So again, it's all back to standard operating procedures.
Do you have a preferred style of training that works in certain industries? If you're an engineer, everybody likes finite detail. If you're dealing with artists, not so much.
I like a combination of online video learning, like learning management modules, with in-class and on-site training. Most franchisors have a really good, quite extensive training program.
Okay, so from a training perspective, did you want to cap off any other piece of element on that? Or?
It's a combination of online training, in-class training, and on-site training. The in-class training used to be 1 or 2 weeks long. Now what they do is with these learning management modules is they'll do 1 week of training that's online that the franchisee does at home. And then they come to the head office and they get additional training at the head office. Subsequent to that, once their location is built, a team comes to the location, trains the franchisee and the franchisee's employees at their own location. So there's quite a bit of training involved.
Do you do any testing or do you have compliance issues for local legislation? I'm thinking like workman's compensation
Yes.
or what we call here in Ontario, WSIB.
It's interesting because every industry has regulations. The franchisor is responsible for telling the franchisee, these are the certifications you need to have, or these is the kind of training that you have to take. And then they will go and they will do that on their own. So it's not necessarily part of the franchise package. So the franchisor does a certain amount of training, and then the franchisee has their training, and then they train their staff. Long way of answering that question.
I don't know if it's still true, but I've been told the worst number of locations possible is 2. 1 is brilliant, 5 works, but 2 kills.
2 is what you build on. I like 2. 2 makes me happy because they can sell 1, keep the other one as a corporate location, but they can sell one of the corporate locations as a franchise, and then they're bringing in money that they can use to fund the franchise expansion. So I like 2.
Tell me about getting to 10. I assume that's where you really shine.
Yeah.
It's from 2 to 10.
Yeah, we shine right at the beginning. We create the franchised entity with all the rules and procedures of branding, manuals, legal documents, and financial statements. Then we help the franchisor to sell franchises. So we put together a marketing plan that is geared at attracting the right franchisees for that concept. And we'll do an outreach, we'll do email. We use a lot of franchise portals, for example. So that's how we do the franchise sales, which comes after the whole setup part.
You mentioned corporate stores. Do you find that you flip the corporate stores eventually, flip them out, or do they act as a showcase model and you just do it by region and then that's it?
It happens in a couple of ways. Either you keep the first one, and that's a model. Every franchise should have 1 corporate location because they need a training and testing center. They have to have at least 1 corporate location. If they have more corporate locations, the best thing to do is to franchise those, right? But always keep 1 because you need a place that you're going to be able to test things. You need to be able to try out new things before you roll them out into the system. So one of the ways that you can fund your business is by selling corporate locations. It's a funding mechanism.
It's a hobby horse of mine, but I'm guessing you have an opinion. The thing that bothers me most about franchising right now is franchisors are getting lazy. They want to sell a state.
Yeah.
And I think that is lazy. Am I wrong? Or is it just another working model?
As a franchise business, you need to stick with what you do best. The perfect example is McDonald's when they went into pizza. It was an absolute unmitigated disaster. Why? Because they're not a pizza place. They're a burger place. Do what you do well. I don't believe in having companies expand into all these different things. Do one thing and do it better than anybody else. That's the key for success.
Key performance indicators, KPIs.
Yeah, KPIs in franchising are things like number of stores opened in a year, number of stores closed or transferred, increase in annual sales like year-to-date sales. Those are the kinds of things that we look for. So we look at the basic sales indicators, the standard sales indicators, and then not just for the franchise location, but also for the franchisor in terms of how many franchises are they selling, how many are they opening, how many did they open this year, how many did they close this year. So we have to keep track of all of that because in franchising, you need to create a franchise disclosure document. And in that document, you need to state exactly what these KPIs are. So not the increase in sales, but you need to state how many new locations you open, how many closed, how many transferred.
Tell me that transfer. I think that's a really active number, but I don't think people follow it very often.
No, but I follow it because it's still a successful franchise, right? A franchise can be transferred for many reasons, and they're not necessarily bad. Sometimes franchisee gets sick, they have to sell locations. Sometimes they want to pass it down to the next generation. Sometimes they want to retire. So transfers happen for a whole bunch of reasons, not just necessarily financial. So a transfer is okay because it's staying within the system. What you want to look at is the attrition rate. And usually there's a turnover of about 10% per year, which is considered normal.
Do you find that people do this as an investment, or are they doing it as, I want to do my own business, but I don't have the source code, so to speak, of the genius moment? If someone does something really well, I want to replicate it and follow the path. Do you find that's the type of person then that's going to be coming in as a franchise? Even if you have turnover, someone goes, you know what, I don't like making burgers, or I don't like, there's something about it.
But they can't get out of it just because they don't like it. They have to sell it. That's the only way to get out of your franchise. You have to sell your franchise to be able to get out of it. Because if it's being terminated, then obviously things are not working well. People who come into franchising strictly to be investors hire operators. So they hire operating partners who are the people that come in and manage the business. And then there's those that, no, I want to get away from corporate America, looking to do something on my own, or this has always been an interest of mine and I've decided to pursue it.
One thing that's obvious to me is most people want a path, and they see the value of a path, or they see the value of shared advertising. But who makes a lousy franchisee?
Oh God, an entrepreneur. If you're a true entrepreneur, you're going to make a lousy franchisee. Franchisees are people that we call intrapreneurs. So they are people that have contributions to make. They're intelligent. They have things to bring to the table, but they understand that they have to operate within the confines of the franchise box and that they can't just go out and do things on their own. People who are true entrepreneurs are going to want to go out and do things on their own, which they can't do. And inevitably, they won't be happy.
I actually knew that answer.
There you go.
Usually an entrepreneur goes, hang on, why am I paying so much for these napkins from the
Correct.
source? When I go over there, it's a quarter of the price and the
Right.
same quality.
They always think franchisees that come in like that can do something better, cheaper, faster than the franchisor. And the fact is they can't. They need the franchisor, but they want to make too many changes. This should be like this, or this should be like that. When I am selling franchises, I can tell by the types of questions people ask me whether or not they're going to be a good franchisee. So if they ask me, how strictly do we have to follow the system? Or will I be allowed to introduce new products into my store? Because I know that those people are inevitably going to get in, and after a year, they're going to figure out that they know how to do it better. And as soon as a franchisee thinks that they could do it better, faster, stronger, whatever, that is the day they start losing money.
Interesting.
If you want to make money, follow the system. That's what it's there for. If you follow the system, do what we tell you to do, you'll make money. If you don't follow the system, you won't make money, and you can't blame it on us because we gave you the tools.
Have you ever found someone involved in the business? In other words, they have the franchise, right? They're following how to make that burger the best burger ever. And they step back going, you know what? I want to do chicken. I want to do pizza. They know they can't introduce it into that space because that's how it's built for it. Have you ever had a franchisee then step back going, okay, now I get the gist of it. And they do their own iteration, another model, totally separate, not impinging on the original source.
If they want to go out and do something else on their own, it depends what the franchise agreement says, because typical franchise agreements say you have to devote full-time efforts to the franchise. That would preclude having a secondary business. However, some franchisors will allow you to have other franchises as long as it's a non-competing brand. So let's say you're doing pizza, franchisor may allow you to have a breakfast place, for example. But to the extent that it's going to take away time and attention from the franchised business, they won't allow that.
Would they let you say you're next to a hotel or next to a motel, whatever and they're hungry people there, right? Would they let you then, if you had the opportunity to feed that group, I'm using the food model, it could be parts for cars, and you happen to do a car dealership, would they let you do a cross connect or a co-promotion?
Absolutely. They love co-promotion. If you're a pizza place and you're next to a hotel, Cross promote all you want. People from the hotel get a 10% discount. It's the easiest way to grow your business through cross promotion.
Lori, if you ask a person on the street about franchising, they think of a hamburger. Those of us who have been around a little bit might even talk about detailing your car, like Z-Bart. That's been around 50 years. What is the neatest franchise that wasn't food that you found and that you consider a success based on what you brought to the table?
Medical spas. Medical
Wow.
spas are
Tell me
huge.
more.
Medical spas, whole health, holistic centers. That's a huge growing area of the franchise industry. Health and wellness is humongous. It's growing in all areas, but it's also growing in franchising. I'm seeing a lot of very particular types of spas open up. So one of them that they only do cryotherapy. Another one only does acupuncture and acupressure. But I'm seeing a lot of this medical spa, health and wellness. That's the area that's growing the most from what I'm seeing over the past year or so.
Is there a lot of margin in that space? What franchises have a good, healthy margin? And what's the con on that?
When you talk about a margin, it's hard to say because sometimes it's a function of how much volume you do, right? Sometimes they're small margins, but you do tremendous volume. Margins are going to be different in every industry. In food, if you make 15% at the bottom line, that's considered a good year. Whereas if you're looking at something like medical spas, it could cost them maybe $50 to provide a treatment that they sell for $250. They're just paying for labor, amortizing their equipment, and they need a little bit of supplies, but it's certainly not $250. Those are the industries, the non-tangibles, where you see the highest margins.
Do you find that males and females tend to be more entrepreneurial, or is it specific to the industry itself?
It's actually more and more of the franchise population are women. Women are getting into it because they don't have to be stuck in corporate America. They have the skill, the ability, the confidence to do something on their own. Women will choose different kinds of pursuits than a man would. For women, it's a really growing industry, particularly in industries that have to do with sales, consulting, HR, marketing, operations. It's very strong. There's a very strong female population in that.
Lori, as somebody who sells franchises, how do we franchise Lori? How does she duplicate herself?
I don't duplicate myself. There's only one of me. And there's only room in this world for one of me. So I can't franchise myself. I wish I could, but I can't. We're not there yet.
You know what? Apparently you can utilize and capitalize on AI, and eventually it will help. You can have a subset of Lori, not the 100% Lori, but
Right.
maybe the 70% Lori.
There you go. That works. I use a lot of AI, so that's certainly a potential possibility.
The one thing that is interesting to me, but might not be interesting to the listeners, what if franchise sells and has to provide to the franchisor the documentation? My understanding there's a near franchise where you're really providing training, but not a franchise per se. What about the near franchise? What's that world like?
Those are called licenses. So if you're selling, you have a system and you're training people on how to use their system, and then they're going out and using that system under their own corporate name, that's licensing. Sometimes you see authorized licensee of ABC Inc. Those are licenses because if you have control over the day-to-day activity of the franchisee, if there's uniforms that need to be worn, those all need to be franchises. If you don't have those factors, you could be a license, which is half the cost of franchising.
What are the terms and conditions in a license? Are they much different than a franchise?
Franchise, no, they're the same. There's an initial fee, there's monthly payments, there's advertising payments. The only difference is there's no obligation on the licensor to provide support or marketing materials or things like that. They do it because they need to grow their business, but there's no obligation to do that there is in franchising.
I came across an instance here in the city of Ottawa, and it was a restaurant franchise operation. One day, a sign went up saying closed. That's unfortunate. How often does that happen? Is it just because the poor location, or did time shift? Because that place was, I would say, there for about 15 years, so obviously it had some success. What happens when all of a sudden the conditions have migrated?
When conditions change, franchisees have to be ready to pivot. If they're not, they start to go downhill and lose money. A restaurant that's been successful for 15 years and it starts to go downhill, chances are it needs rebranding. It may need menu tweaks, or sometimes it's just a lousy operator. And that does happen. As long as you just have a great location, you have a lousy operator. And franchise owners will take those units back because they don't want signs to come down. They'll take the unit back, operate it, and then resell it.
Okay.
Typically.
It's unfortunate because in that particular plaza, there's 3 other restaurants and
Right.
they seem to be running well.
That sounds like a poor operator. If the neighbors are doing well and you're not, it's a poor operator.
Return on investment. Is it something you see right away? Do you plan it like a capital investment? Yeah, it's 3 to 5 years out, 10 years out.
It depends, because if you're buying a restaurant and your investment is $750,000, it's going to take you a longer time to get a return on your investment. If you're doing a home-based franchise and your investment is $35,000 or $50,000, chances are you'll make that back within the first 6 months. For the franchisee, at the franchisor level, franchisors start to make the real money after 10 locations. They can manage up until 10, can be making money, but the real breakthrough comes after 10.
Is there a point in time when, let's say you hit 10, how big does that number go?
People start at 10. Look at Subway started at 1, right? Now they've got thousands. You got to start with 1, and ultimately, if it's good, people will be interested in it and you'll be able to grow it.
You, I assume because of how broad your scope is, get a lot of looky-loos. Person doesn't want to waste your time and their time. What should they be already doing or knowing or have to talk to Lori?
They don't have to have anything. That's what I'm saying. They don't have to have anything to talk to. They need to have a concept that has 2 years of profitability. That's all I'm looking for. And it has to be something you can teach other people to do. We're not talking about manufacturing of computer parts. We're talking about being able to teach someone how to make a burger, right? So that's all you really need.
What are the future trends in this space?
The future trends are away from brick and mortar. So they're into professional services, home services, medical spas, health and wellness. Those are the areas that you see are growing, especially things that I consider to be recession-proof. HVAC, pool cleaning, gardening, home repairs, home renovations. Those are all relatively recession-proof industries. Those are the industries I like to work in. And that's what you see the most coming up now.
How do we get a hold of you?
Very easy to get a hold of me, Lori@LoriKarpman.com. Just email me, or you can go to my website, which is LoriKarpman.com. So it's LoriKarpman.com, LoriKarpman.com. You can go to the website, and right from the website, you can schedule a meeting with me. And it's free to talk to me, and I'm happy to give everybody whatever information they want or answer questions. There's no stupid questions. So that's what I'm here for. If somebody out there has their curiosity piqued and they want to talk to me, please feel free to reach out.
Lori, what areas of the universe do you service?
I service the entire universe.
Lit on the moon, you're all set to...
Other than outer space and other planets, if it's on Earth, I service it. My business is international. I've got clients all across the U.S. I have some in Canada. I have clients in Dubai, France, Italy, all over the place.
Is it a little more interesting doing it overseas?
When I'm working overseas, it's an overseas concept that wants to come to the United States or Canada. I do what we call cross-border transactions. I bring concepts from other countries to other countries. Although my crafting and skydiving, what can I tell you? I still love them.
I want to say thank you to Lori Karpman, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. Thank you for being with us while Lori's given us a really good education on franchising and that space. If you have a really successful idea, you got 2 locations, or 1 location, and 2 years worth of really good business, Lori's the lady to reach out to because she can help you grow that, scale the business, which makes life a lot easier for you.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, Wayne@motivateuca. That is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter U.ca, or his website motivateu.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Javan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner. And Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack 4 Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.